Hello lords and ladies, welcome back to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon. Can I just say how amazing it is that we've gotten Samurai Jack back? The show was a huge part of my childhood, and I remember watching every new episode with my mom and sister. It's distinct in being one of a few more modern shows that my mother has actually loved. She even once said Jack was handsome. Watching this episode felt like I was literally transported back to my childhood in a way I don't think I've ever experienced with any other revival. In that way, I think other networks and writers should take notes. This is how you do it. What I mean is, it felt like the show was never gone for the decade that it was. It just felt like a week had passed between the season 4 finale and this episode. So seamless was this episode. The story picks up 50 years after the season 4 finale, a decision I was initially hesitant about. It offers some more depressing turn of events for our friend Jack, but I think it helps a little with offering something more standalone, but ultimately still somewhat in tune with the previous seasons. I'm sure that can also be inviting to new fans. We jump back into the future of Aku with a Jack who is more disillusioned and haunted by his past. Quite literally, in fact, as throughout the episode various people, mostly his mother and father, appear to cry out and blame him for forsaking them. It's a grim but largely striking way of presenting us Jack's mental state, as he has not been able to age in the 50 years that have passed. It's hard to imagine what that would do to a man, but this episode definitely offers up some of its own interpretations for what that would look like with scenes like this. Gone is the clean-shaven Jack, and in his place is a samurai without a purpose. His sword is lost, he's replaced his clothes with armor and a gun, and he seems to shy away from conflict. Or at least that's what I get from the episode, even though it technically opens with him assisting some adorable creatures who seem to communicate with their antenna. It's an insanely cool dialogue light opening that immediately gives us what Samurai Jack is partially known for. Incredible action and cinematic visuals. No other cartoon in this era can boast what Samurai Jack has. You almost feel like you're watching something out of a movie, the way the camera pans in, reducing all but a brief square to blackness, subsequently drawing your eye to what the animators want you to focus on. Scenes like this are presented throughout the first episode of the season, and it really adds a level of uniqueness you, again, wouldn't expect from most of the recent shows that litter the networks. Besides showing us Jack and his life 50 years later, we also get several peeks into the daughters of Aku, 7 young women trained from birth to hunt and kill Jack. I'm really intrigued by how much focus is placed on these women, especially this one here. I can't make out her name in the episode, unfortunately, so you have to clue me in on it. Clearly, she has more importance, as much of the flashbacks focus on her training than the others. I'm expecting to see a lot of growth from her in the remaining episodes, unless she just dies in the next episode. I also just find it fascinating that these girls are constantly brought up to kill Jack in the 50 years since he's still been alive. Although, what I'm hearing online is that this is the first time, but in the episode it felt like there had been a previous generation. So I'm not too sure on the details there. Also, apparently, this parallels Jack's upbringing, where he was taken away from his homeland and trained in order to kill Aku. And these girls are having that same upbringing, but in order to kill Jack. So it's like this really cool parallelism right there. Speaking of Aku, he doesn't make an appearance in this episode outside of a statue and as a voice on the other end of a phone. I'm curious as to why that is. Perhaps to build up to his appearance. Whatever the reason, I would like to stop and take time to pay respects to his original voice actor, Mako, who made this character so much more than I think any other actor could have. He helped bring Aku to life, and it's sad to know he was not able to take part in this revival. Let's hope that Mark Baldwin can do him justice. Moving on, we got the introduction of a new, albeit brief, robot foe for Jack to overcome. Styled after Sammy Davis Jr. and named for an Italian comedy clown character, Scaramouche is largely similar to another baddie from previous seasons, but makes up for that with his ability to control various objects and weapons with either his flute or his voice. I really like the challenge he presented Jack with, and how the villain was treated to a resounding defeat, much like the stock character he's based on. Plus, Tom Kenny, who I think is the voice of SpongeBob, does a really bang-up job here. What was more interesting was Jack taking one of the robot's weapons, almost like a souvenir of sorts, or a spoil of war. I'll be interested in seeing if this is a recurring theme with Jack, taking more and more off his defeated foes, later utilizing them against newer foes. Almost like a deadly version of Mega Man. Either way, this definitely shows us how much different Jack is now. He's no longer really a man of honor, or at least he's willing to be more like Aku than previously. How low will we see Jack descend in this final season of the show? Can't wait to see. Jack is back, and it's truly a blast from the past. Season 5, if it keeps up the pace of this episode, is bound to be one of the most talked about cartoons this year. It's unlike anything else out at the moment. It's on Adult Swim, so it can lean even heavier into mature content than even the original did, and it looks and sounds so much like the original show, you'll at first think you're a kid again. If you haven't already checked this show out, I implore you to do so. It'll easily be your favorite cartoon of the year if you're anything like me or the others who are hyped for our man Jack. Now it's your turn to share your comments on the episode down below. What did you make of it? Let me know. Before you click away, make sure to subscribe to Cartoon Hangout for all your cartoon and cartoon related needs. Thanks for watching, and take care. Hello lords and ladies, welcome to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon. What an episode, guys. There's a lot of intensity in it, a lot of emotions that get delegated to the action and expressions in the scenes that ain't spoken words. You might actually not get that impression from the opening scene given how comedic it is, but that's actually one of my favorite moments in this episode. It's a little light breather that shows us what Aku has been up to. The only thing that sucks is that while the new voice actor does a decent job at Aku's voice, fans will no doubt feel like it's a little off, and that's going to take some getting used to. But I guess better to use someone who does a pretty good impression of Aku's original voice actor than to recast his voice entirely. But that's where any levity ends and a pretty heavy episode begins. From talk online and previews, I knew going into this episode that Jack was going to kill someone. I know he's faced at least some human or living creatures in the previous seasons, but I guess this is supposed to be his first time taking a human life. With a more mature focus in this season than previous ones, I can get behind that emotional arc we're about to experience. Despite the previews playing up that aspect of the episode, much of the fallout regarding Jack's taking of a human life seems like it's being devoted to the next week's episode. The actual substance of this episode is Jack dealing with the daughters of Aku and how relentless they are. I think the idea is that because they're human, they're more intelligent than some of the robots Jack's faced, leading them to easily hide and bait him to come out of hiding or track him down. Not something a robot maybe could have done. I'm not sure, as it's been ages since I binged the series prior to this season. The results of this are, of course, a fantastically animated episode that rivals any live-action movie or any cartoon in the past decade. It's just so stunningly gorgeous. The show's never been heavy on dialogue, and this works in its favor in this episode. No distractions, nothing to focus on but Jack and the daughters of Aku, as well as the scenery. There's this confusing but really beautiful part of the episode that cuts from the stuff around Jack, and instead shows us a white wolf fending off a group of crazy-looking creatures. It's clear that this is meant to be paralleling the parts about Jack. The white wolf is Jack. It's a really artistic moment and becomes even deeper by the end of the episode, where Jack sets off an explosion, seemingly wanting to die as he descends into a river, and we cut back to the wolf who has managed to kill his attackers, only to have died itself. It really makes you wonder what will be the conclusion of this season. Are we going to get a happy ending for Jack, or something more depressing where Jack wins the day, but succumbs to his wounds? It's also more likely it's just symbolizing the events of this episode. Either way, Samurai Jack Season 5 delivers another incredible episode. It's beautiful from start to finish, and will pull you into whatever's happening and be over before you know it. In that way, it kind of almost feels like nothing happens, or the episode's story was too brief, but that's not really the case. And what do you think of the episode? Let me know down below, and make sure to subscribe to the new channel, Cartoon Hangout. Thanks for watching, and take care. Hello lords and ladies, welcome back to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon. Once again, the creative team behind Samurai Jack knocks it out of the park. Episode 3 is just another example of what makes this show so unique among cartoons, if just for the visuals alone. After falling into the river in the last episode, Jack finds himself haunted by this creepy looking man on a horse that I failed to mention in my past 2 reviews. I don't know why I didn't bring this up, but for whatever reason it slipped my mind. It's really, well, creepy, and I don't know what or who he could be. It's entirely possible this figure is supposed to stand for death, hunting the ageless Jack. If that is the case, I think that's pretty damn cool. Or it could be another representation of Jack. It's not like he isn't already being haunted by himself. Holy shit, that is scary. Dude, Jack. Speaking of crazy imagery, we get this scene partway through the episode, which also reveals the wolf from last episode is still alive. Once again, we're treated to another moment of parallelism. Both the wolf and Jack are bleeding so much they seem animalistic or inhuman. I mean, in the case of the wolf, he really isn't human. I think a better way of thinking of it would be that the scene is meant to represent Jack feeling like a monster after taking a human life. Yet, to the wolf, it's just a part of life and survival of the fittest. And over the course of the wolf tending to Jack's needs, I think that lesson is imparted to Jack. I guess it also helps that Jack dreams of his father and his own words of wisdom. That's my takeaway from this episode anyway. Moving on, we finally get to see the daughters of Aku reacting to their sister's death, and it is not what I thought it would be. I expected anger, rage, sadness. Instead, it was completely emotionless, and it really highlights how these girls were raised to see emotions, beyond the ones needed to hunt and kill Jack, of course, as weaknesses. Their sister's death wasn't a sad event, it was just proof that she was weak. And like one of them says in the episode, death is failure. Another scene reminding us that these girls know nothing beyond their training is this kind of silly, kind of weird scene where they see 2 deer.
It will devour the weaker one. What madness is this?
These daughters of Aku are almost mere children, if you think about it. Sure, highly trained children, but they didn't receive the compassionate training given to Jack. He trained to save his country and the world from Aku. These girls were trained just to kill Jack, but in a much different method. They learned only what was needed to kill him, it seems, basically nothing else. And the scene really reveals that fact. When the last daughter is barely hanging onto the tree in the episode's climax, this is even more apparent as she screams and yells defiantly about killing Jack and how he's scum. These aren't the words of a very intelligent or compassionate person. She's not much of a person even. She's not a robot, but she might as well be. And I think that's what Jack comes to terms with when he lets her loose. The fighting prior to this moment is of course probably one of the best scenes in this season. It's so simple looking, yet amazingly scripted. Jack fights and hides in between the whiteness of the snow and snow-covered trees. It's so beautiful and artistic. If this show doesn't win some award after its finale, I will be shocked, because this show keeps delivering on intense action, writing, and visuals. Simply put, I find episode 3 to be another wonderful episode. And that's it from me. Now it's time for you to share your thoughts on the episode. What was your favorite part? Let me know down below, and be sure to subscribe to Cartoon Hangout for more reviews just like this every week. Thanks for watching, and take care. Hello lords and ladies, welcome back to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon. What do you get when you combine neon colors, a crazy assassin, and a wisecracking samurai? Well, you get this episode, of course. And what an episode it is. It was almost worth the extra wait for it so that Adult Swim could troll everyone with the new season of Rick and Morty. Almost. Episode 4 doesn't lose any of the hype or praise that fans have been unsurprisingly showering on it since Season 5's debut. It's still just as beautifully animated as any other episode, and the visuals when Jack and Ashi are in the belly of the beast are very gorgeous to look at. Oh yeah, Ashi, the last surviving daughter of Aku, is piggybacking, literally, with Jack this episode, and it is hilarious. I mentioned how childish she sounded towards the end of last episode, and I think I was on the right track with that. It's more like she's been brainwashed, which was easily apparent in the first episode, but way more clearer now. The choice to pair the two up is an interesting dynamic, and a great choice by the writers. Instead of just having her die, she's constantly attempting to murder Jack, all while he's trying to save both of their lives, even while his dark side, represented by his past self, wants to persuade him into killing or leaving her behind. It's not as dark as that sounds, and instead it's pretty much a bulk of the comedy in this episode. In a way, this episode felt even more like the previous seasons than the past few episodes, what with Jack's attempts at jokes and all. By the end of the episode, a fan ends up probably being correct with their guess that Ashi would give up and be redeemed. While that last part is yet to be seen, Ashi does give up on killing Jack after a ladybug distracts her and reminds her of something from her childhood. I was about to cringe at this part, as I didn't think it would make sense to have her stop solely from seeing the bug and the beauty of nature, but combined with the flashback and how she sees Jack treating the insect with respect really helps keep things logical. Episode 4 is just a really fun episode that gives fans a slight reprieve from all the gloom and doom we've been getting this season. That's not me criticizing the mature content, but rather me saying that eventually you do need to take a breather or your fans will get tired. Jack's wisecracks, their Jonah and the Whale experience, along with Ashi's possible return to the good side all add up to a wonderful viewing experience that's told extremely well. I can't wait for next week's episode and where we'll see Jack and Ashi's story go next. But how about you? Have anything additional to add about this episode? Share it down below and make sure to hit the sub button if you want even more cartoon content. Thanks for watching, and take care. Hello, lords and ladies. Welcome back to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon. Well, it's been a long time coming, huh? This has probably been the longest wait in between reviews for quite some time, and I apologize. With that being said, let's just jump right into the review since I've kept you waiting far too long as it is. The 5th episode continues Ashi's new journey as Jack introduces her to the real truth, that Aku is the true evil and source of pain in the world, not Jack. It includes cute moments like this, with Jack explaining how the stars in the night sky formed, but also some heavy, albeit well-animated scenes like these. I personally feel this is a great, if somewhat obvious path for the new season to walk down. I guess it was either let her die, or open her eyes to what the truth really was and have Jack teach her to carry on in his place. Although that last part is just me speculating. It'd be a sad but kinda hopeful end to the series to have Ashi take up his mantle in defending the world after they take down Aku. Samurai Ashi has a nice ring to it. Plus there's probably plenty of fan art depicting that very scenario. A lot of this episode focuses on that revealing journey for Ashi, but towards the end we see Jack seemingly submit to this otherworldly figure that's been creeping out in the background in most episodes, after thinking the children he was trying to save had died. It's a strikingly powerful moment because no sooner than he departs with this figure, destination unknown to us, do we see, along with Ashi, that the kids are safe. But for Jack, it was probably the straw that broke the camel's back. I can only assume the figure maybe stands for death, but maybe if I knew more Japanese culture, I could make a much better guess. Either way, I think this was a pretty great episode, if just for Ashi's moments. She turns around rather quickly from her dark path, but then, like it was said by her mother, or that woman, I'm assuming it was her mother, she was always the one who got distracted. But I think it wasn't so much that she was easily distracted, I think she was just the most human among her sisters. But what did you lords and ladies think? Are you a fan of Ashi teaming up with Jack, and how do you want or think their relationship will evolve over the course of the season? Let me know down below, and keep an eye out for my next Samurai Jack review, which is also running rather late. Thanks for watching, and take care. lords and ladies, welcome back to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon. I'm still working to catch up on these reviews, so bear with me as I struggle to get them out. For now, let's finally get to last week's episode. Continuing from where we left off in episode 5, Ashi scours land for the missing Jack. This episode is definitely a typical Samurai Jack episode in that not much happens in terms of action, but there's still quite a bit of substance to the episode nonetheless, which isn't something a lot of cartoons seem adept at lately. Last week's episode's theme was, as I saw it, truth. It was about Ashi opening her eyes to the truth that the lies had blinded her to. Or, better yet, it was about seeing the influence Aku had had on the land. Episode 6, on the other hand, was about seeing the opposite. What had Jack's influence on the land and people done? What she saw was hope in many forms. She met several groups that Jack had helped in previous seasons, even gifting us longtime fans with some cool cameos. Though my memory is so bad, I probably couldn't recognize the cameo from the first appearance. In the process of witnessing all this, we got to see the last bit of hold Aku had on Ashi melt away. Literally. In a very tame but fan-servicey scene, Ashi scrubs away the darkness she'd been born with and was in a way reborn herself. The scene was really great, not just because of that transformation, but also because it was kinda sexy, and it gives us an even cuter Ashi than before. Don't judge me. Moving on, we finally get some answers as to the identity of the mysterious figure stalking Jack, and I gotta give props to some of my viewers who correctly guessed a sort of samurai Grim Reaper. I mean, I guessed death, but mine was probably a little too vague. Turns out, he was haunting Jack for not fulfilling his purpose, and was urging him to commit what I can only assume was seppuku, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. That's a Japanese suicide ritual in which a samurai disembowels themselves for bringing shame unto themselves. In this case, Jack thought he'd let children die, and on top of this, he never vanquished Aku. So, by the samurai code, I guess he felt he should kill himself. It's the darkest the show has ever gotten, if memory serves me correctly, but it really helps in showing how lost Jack has been, and was, until Ashi restored his hope. It's this really heartwarming series of scenes, where a girl who had nothing but hate in her heart helped the man who helped her find true purpose. And that is what Ashi's role in the story was. That little glimmer of hope that was meant to bring us the old Jack back, who had along the way lost himself. It's a very relatable moment, minus the fantastical elements, of course, because sometimes we all need a little help getting back on track, and we do that through the people we touch along our own journey. Of course, from here, fans are now speculating that Ashi has served her role in the story, and is now free to be killed off, which is even more likely given the more mature nature of the season. However, I really hope that's not the case. In the end, we get another wonderful episode. It's hopeful and really conveys all the good that Jack has done, on top of being a brilliantly told tale. What, did you expect me to say something else? I don't know a single cartoon I've watched lately that has had such strong episodes, one after the other. And while I'm sure there's gonna be a dud here somewhere, I just haven't found it yet. But maybe you have a different opinion on last week's episode. If so, share those thoughts down in the comments below while making sure to subscribe to this channel and my brand new channel for more cartoon content. Thanks for watching, and take care. Hello lords and ladies, welcome back to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon. Last week's episode, because yes, I'm still behind even though I said I wouldn't be, was honestly the final piece that was in place that needed to be knocked down for the series to reach its conclusion. Now obviously killing Aku is the goal, and the show's not over, but now there's nothing in our character's way. This episode had both Jack and Ashi shed their emotional baggage in two very different forms. For Jack, it was realizing he'd been blinded by anger, and that was why he could not locate his sword. The realization required a bit of meditation and removing the imbalance from his mind. Other than being a really interesting trip into Jack's mind, or wherever he went on his spiritual journey, it also made me chuckle when three mysterious beings granted Jack his sword back, but also his clothes and a shave? I like that Jack still had one last barrier to overcome before just getting the sword back, because as easily as he managed to find a bird to lower him down into the mountain where he lost it, I was beginning to question why he hadn't done it sooner. Now, of course, I realized the sword had vanished back to wherever it had come from. Speaking of that, am I just fuzzy on my Samurai Jack knowledge, or have we never seen those three prior to this episode? If we have, I apologize for not recalling them. If not, that may need some explanation. Or maybe not. Who knows? Ashi, on the other hand, has her hands full with an army coming to kill Jack. I don't know how they knew he was there. Maybe Ashi's mother tipped them off. Either way, this was probably the highlight of the episode, featuring tons of blood, action, and Ashi's own resolution in the form of a confrontation with her mother. It was fluid, tense, and deadly. And of course, two women fighting each other is kind of fun too. But like I said, this episode definitely strips away most, if not all, of the things holding our protagonists back, and now they can just focus on taking out Aku. It's probably going to involve the Scotsman's army, or something along those lines, and I'm sure that's going to be hilariously awesome. I can see some people thinking of this as sorta fillerish, even though it has everything to do with the ongoing plot, but it's not without warrant. It's a little slower than most of the episodes this season, though maybe not as slow as older Samurai Jack episodes, even though Ashi gets plenty of time for action in. I think it's just the slightly slower paced Jack moments that make it seem like less is happening. And because it seemed like last episode was what this episode's final moments were, a call to action. So yeah, I can understand if that's a criticism for this one, even if I haven't exactly seen any complaints along that line. While certainly not my favorite Season 5 episode, it was still fun and gives plenty to look forward to in terms of Ashi and Jack taking on Aku. This is episode 7, with the next episode coming out, I think, yesterday. So we're only a couple episodes away from the finale. Buckle up, because I'm sure it's going to be action-packed and emotional. But what did you think of last week's episode? If you have any thoughts, please share them with the rest of us down below, and tune in soon for more reviews. Thanks for watching, and take care. Hello, lords and ladies! Welcome back to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon. Remember when I said in my previous video that some fans may consider episode 7 to be filler? Well, this week's episode definitely was filler, but while the plot took a back seat, we did get some other plot, if you know what I mean.
I want a diamond ring, I want some bracelets and everything. Daddy, you better get the best one.
In all seriousness though, this one does ditch the story for, I guess, a more character-driven, if I can call it that, episode that sees our two protagonists making their way to Aku, I presume, or somewhere. It's not really stated, but given the events of the last episode, that's all I can really guess. Not sure why they didn't fly on their bird either. Instead, they take a ride on a creature that kind of reminded me of Morrowind for some reason, and fight a furry flash mob. No, okay, I'm joking, but this was probably one of the more hilarious moments in this episode. They literally coordinated enough to spell out, "Die, Samurai Jack," and expected him to notice. What would have happened if he hadn't? It's incredibly silly, but I'll forgive it, as it nets us some moments like this, with Jack and Ashi being really shy around each other. That's actually the character-driven aspect of the episode, the blossoming relationship between these two characters, and I'm torn on it. On the one hand, I definitely am one of the fans who shipped them, but was a little too afraid to voice that because, well, reasons. One of the reasons being I've gotten flack for doing so in past videos, as well as other people seeing it more as a father-daughter relationship, and I didn't want to be accused of peddling incest. Anyway, the main reason I'm torn on this, though, has everything to do with, I guess, the pacing of it. I'm fine with characters suddenly realizing, oh crap, I think I like you. I'm totally cool with that. But sometimes a romance pops up out of nowhere, leaving you scratching your head as to how it happened. In this case, I can't get too bothered, as there's been some slight hints in behavior since the two teamed up that indicated a mutual attraction to each other. Mostly on Jack's part, I think, but in the last 2 episodes, it's become a little clearer that Ashi feels the same, and it's on full blast in this episode. I think I just would have preferred a buffer between the events of this episode and maybe one more episode to build it up. Maybe that'll be something that will occur over the remaining episodes, now that they're clearly hooking up per the closing scenes of this episode. Now, if that was a clusterfuck of an explanation, basically I wish the build-up had been slightly more telegraphed than what we got. But ultimately, I am glad to see them together. And at least it's not nearly as out of the blue as the Korra Asami romance from Legend of Korra. Oh, don't act like there were hints in that show. There were none. Beyond that, there's almost nothing more to say. The rest of the episode involves the two taking shelter from a sandstorm in a crashed alien prison ship, which serves as the means to get these two characters to hook up, I suppose. Nothing says romance like being almost killed by literally the worst thing in the universe, but kudos for the sickening design. The atmosphere was definitely spooky, as is the usual for seemingly abandoned space prisons, and Ashi losing her clothes satisfied a lot of, itches. Mostly comical ones, you perverts. Who am I kidding though, right? Jack's reaction was just the best though. There was a lot of, not a lot, but there was a couple of naughty comedic moments in this episode. Some that might be seen as really lowbrow, like low-hanging fruit. And wink wink. See what I did there? That was low-hanging fruit. But I actually thought it was hilarious. I didn't expect those jokes to be in Samurai Jack. So just the sheer absurdity of it being there was just the best thing ever. But all around, it was a really good episode. Like last week's episode, though, it's probably not going to be one of my top favorites of the season, unless I later decide the bits of fan service and jokes we got make up for a somewhat slow walk to the series finale. And it probably will. But what did you think of this episode? I for sure want to hear your thoughts and reactions about Jack and Ashi finally hooking up, and the humorous bits of fan service we got. Let me know down below, and make sure to subscribe to both my channels for more cartoon content. Thanks for watching, and take care. Hello lords and ladies, welcome back to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon. And boy, what an episode. I'm still reeling from how the episode went and the ending it left us on. If you haven't figured it out yet, there will be spoilers in this video, so stop watching if you haven't seen it yet. I think what is on everyone's mind at this point is that heartbreaking moment near the end of the episode, as opposed to some of the light-hearted ones that brought us to that point. But just to sort of get it out there, the early parts of the episode were great. Seeing what happened immediately after Jack and Ashi kissed was funny and well written. If only the entire episode had remained that blissful for them, huh? So let's just get right into it. After being misled into thinking Jack had lost his sword, Aku reveals to Jack that Ashi was his daughter. Not Jack's daughter, but Aku's daughter. Sorry if that sentence was confusing. This moment was a little confusing for me because for some reason I just assumed Jack knew this, but upon reflection, it's obvious that topic never came up. In fact, I don't even think Ashi knew by her reaction. Jack is obviously shocked, but even more so when Ashi flat out attacks him in defense of her father. She's being controlled, and she is eventually transformed thanks to Aku. It's this moment that got people saying, "What the fuck?" all across the internet, and was unknowingly spoiled for me by an asshole YouTuber who put it in his actual freaking thumbnail. For the several minute long fight between Jack and Ashi, my mouth was agape. I was shocked, bewildered, and worried about what was going to happen, especially in that terrible scene with Ashi begging to be killed. The two just literally hooked up, and the writers already have her lined up to be killed. Talk about a vicious turnaround, right? But boy, if it doesn't make for some thrilling television. The first half of this episode was cute, but if it had just been that, I think it wouldn't have been as exciting or memorable, besides giving us potentially more cute Jack and Ashi scenes. It's this second half that really amps things up for the season finale next week. Sure, I don't want Ashi to die, but there's definitely far more riding on Jack now that Aku has a sword and Ashi has been transformed. Despite it all, the events here were definitely unforeseen by me. The seeming betrayal of Ashi before we learn she's being controlled, even being kind of teased at Ashi's angry calling of Jack's name earlier, to her becoming basically Lady Aku. It was just an excellent episode through and through. The pacing was good, the twist and delivery was great, if heartbreaking, and it's got me pumped if a little nervous about the finale. I'm hoping for a good ending, but this whole season has shook things up in my opinion, so it could go a completely different route. I guess what I'm trying to say is I love the twist. It's shocking, extremely personal for Jack, and it's going to be fun seeing how this is resolved next episode. Wouldn't go as far as to say it's the best episode of the season, but it's certainly exciting and well executed in my opinion. But what about you? Any thoughts on the events of this episode? If so, share them down below. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching. Take care. Hello lords and ladies, welcome back to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon. It's been 10 years in the making, but Samurai Jack is finally over, with its finale airing Saturday night. There's a lot to unpack about its emotional ending, and I'm not even sure where to begin. I guess I'll start with the fact that the writers definitely could wrap up the series in one 30-minute episode, unlike what other fans have said. I'm sure not everyone will be pleased, and could point out several moments that could have had more time spent on, but the finale does its job well. It delivers us an incredibly action-packed final battle as everyone Jack has ever helped comes to their rescue. The final battle is as much funny as it is sad, considering many do end up dying. But I'll say it ends up being one of the best moments of the episode, just to watch all the different shots and characters and tactics used to take on Aku. There's not much else to say about that other than it does what you would hope a finale would do. I guess the elephant in the room is the ending, right? I could talk about everything else, but the final battle honestly takes up a lot of this episode, and I've already praised it. Some other honorable mentions is just how hopeful the episode is. Despite knowing they could die, this episode never gets into the edge or grit that we saw in earlier episodes. Yes, some characters do die, but there's a sense of hope around, which allows the characters to actually have some humorous dialogue, like the Scotsman's line to Jack, or Aku being pummeled by a giant samurai robot. It's just a little thing, but it really helps drive the episode away from being too dark. Right, but back to the elephant, namely the ending, which is Jack and Ashi traveling back in time to kill Aku. Rather quickly, if you ask me, but the deed's done and all is restored. Jack and Ashi are to be married, I assume, yet she falls, and it's revealed that since Aku is gone, she would never be born. So she dies. It's a rather bittersweet ending to the series, one I had kind of seen coming, but had also hoped wouldn't happen. Ashi and Jack were just so good together, and now he's back in a world he had left behind years ago, and he's alone. It's shown that he does make peace with her death, but man, it's more of a downer than I thought. It's not a bad ending in terms of being badly written, but I definitely wanted something else. Maybe he should have just killed Aku in the future instead, but that would probably be too selfish, considering the deaths that Aku caused in the years prior. Despite that, I think it was beautifully handled, and while the finale does lack a little in what I wanted out of it, I think it's still a somewhat fitting end to the series. It's no small feat for a show that's been dead for a decade to come back and finally give fans a proper conclusion, but somehow in an age of soulless reboots and remakes, Samurai Jack did it. Whether it's all every fan hoped for isn't something I can speculate on. I just know that I'm happy to know how the show ended. It's been a great ride with some really wild and unexpected moments, whether it be the psychological nature of it in the early episodes or how the show took advantage of its more mature time slot. I'm a little sad to see it go, as it was a significant portion of my childhood once upon a time, but I don't think I could have asked for more. What about you, lords and ladies? Any thoughts you'd like to share about the Samurai Jack finale? If so, share those down below. What was your favorite moment? Be sure to subscribe for more reviews just like this one. Thanks for watching, and take care.